Thank you so much for joining us, Karen.
Yeah, good
Uh,
morning, Faizan. Thank you.
you're welcome. Let's look at the whole year's perspective for this year, and also let's compare it with the last couple of years. How do you see Uzbekistan's financial market and stock market, especially, has performed this year considering last year's performance?
Yeah, so for the stock exchange trades, we see that the turnover this year is a bit lower than the last year. So the last year we had about 400 roughly million dollars. For 9 months of this year, we ended up with less than 200, which is the by one third lower. And by the end of the year, I guess the dynamic will be more or less the same. But it's not because the turnover of trades are much lower. It's because of the lack of the large privatization and M&A transactions, kind of like if we're trying to compare it with last year. So last year we had a couple of big sales with cement bank companies, which each gave like 50, 70 million dollars. So this year we didn't saw such big transactions, just a few of them. So that's why the turnover is lower. If we look on smaller deals, like we name it like real retail turnover, where the deal size is lower than the $100,000. So for these deals, we see that it's just about 5 to 6% of the market. Is very small, but it's growing, and more importantly, it's the number of deals is growing. So since there is some financial source applications, trading platforms on the mobile phones, people started trading securities in Uzbekistan, and the number of deals increased few times. So this is, I guess, the most important part of the development of the stock exchange trading this year.
Great. I've heard from a few of my colleagues, even in my last interview, they mentioned that the policy changes are occurring on a regular basis, but the implementation has been the key driver for the interest of investors. How do you see that this year has the policies been implemented much more better than before, like some of the investors have pointed out?
Mhm. Better or no, I don't know, but it definitely was active year for the legal changes. So we could say twice changed the regulator, or even three times, because the in December the last year the administrative reform started, and the team in the Ministry of Finance, which was the regulator, changed it. Then the team in Ministry of Finance changed it again in the middle of summer. And then since September, we got the new independent regulator, the National Agency for Prospective Projects. Uh, so definitely, I could say that on this side, this year was very inefficient. So three changes of the regulator, it means a lot. Every new team tries to catch up with the news, with the ongoing project and everything. So there was not much of the development this year. But again, with a new regulator, we started to actively engage in a process. We hope that the new year, 2024, will be much more interesting and will bring us a few changes, a few new instruments to the market. So it's a big hopes for the development.
Great. So you mentioned that next year will be much more productive because of the policies that have been implemented this year, correct? Uh,
Which started to be implemented. So the regulator are now drafting new documents, which hopefully will help us to develop the market. As I said, it was said many times, new instruments like Islamic bonds, like exchange traded fund. It all takes time. I'm not sure that we will be launching it next year, but at least the legislative basis could be prepared within the half a year, 1 year. So at least we will have something on our hands to discuss with the legislative chamber and then maybe to implement.
So overall, you can say that the project is mainly focused for a you could say like a 2030 project, is it? It should be implemented and
Yeah.
you can see the effects rolling over until 2030.
Uh, Definitely until 2030, but I hope that first results, the real results, will be seen even in 2025. Next year is super important in terms of the like a back office work, drafting the legislation, improving the IT infrastructure, improving the rules and some internal documents, and it gives the ideas for us how to develop the market and which companies might be interesting for investors. So it's a big work ahead.
We've been looking at the bi-weekly reports and yearly reports as well. Most of the key players have always been the banking industry and the big mining industries and all. Are there any new players in the stock market which are gaining interest and something that foreign investors can actually look at for the future, for the next year, hopefully?
Uh, no, picture this year didn't change it much, so it's still that leading like 5, 10 companies which usually traded. A couple of companies even out of the list because they was delisted and now trading OTC and the activity is a bit lower on them. But in the end of the year, like just last week on a Friday, we had the two IPOs closed, very small deals, like a couple of $1 million. But we hope that these companies will be traded in 2024. It's a Uzbek Telecom, first of all. It's a national telecom operator. And the second is a largest state-owned insurance company, Uzbek Invest. So both of these companies will be traded since this week. I guess trading starts tomorrow, and we will see how it will perform. And the next year, I guess the activity on this securities will be much interesting. Plus, we hope to have a couple of other IPOs next year, and maybe some private players will come to market. So we'll see the few new names on market.
Great. Last week, I think there was an agreement done with Russia as well, and Russia is planning to invest some money in Uzbekistan's market as well in terms of development and all. Do you see that money invested in any specific direction, in any specific industries which you think can boost Uzbekistan's economy?
Yeah. I'm not sure on which agreement you mentioning because there is a lot of different agreements every week, every month announced. But I really don't see that the Russian investments will affect significantly on the stock market. Yes, we see some Russian retail investors coming for last few years. Definitely, it's a usual process for last couple of years in all CIS countries. But in terms of the institutional investors, in terms of the strategic approach from the Russian investors to start investing in Uzbek securities, no, we don't see any significant process here. In like other sectors of economy, yes, sure, they are active. But again, it's not related to the stock market. This big companies usually do not list. They do some private projects, so they completely do not affect on the market.
This year's stock market, which factors have been the major, you can say, like driving factors for the stock market?
Yeah, we for many years everyone was saying that the international financial markets are not connected and not affects Uzbekistan, but it's not true. Definitely, international markets affects, and what we see for the last couple of years is definitely its effect of this geopolitics and macroeconomic trends in the economy. Frontier, not developed market like Uzbekistan are becoming less interesting for international investors because the interest rates on treasuries, on some other high quality securities are growing in the Western world and developed markets, so there is less reasons to invest for a not that high return on the frontier market and taking more risks. So overall, the funds on the frontier markets are losing the investments. So that's why they're cutting the investments in our market as well. So activity is still growing, but it's growing not that rapidly as it was 3 years ago. So yeah, I guess macroeconomic overall international trends are affecting Uzbek market directly. For example, we was expecting that this year will be very active for the corporate bond issues, but since the rates increased from the very low levels to quite high, treasuries are giving 5%, and now the borrowings in dollars, for example, in Uzbekistan could be, I don't know, 12, 14%, which is very expensive for local companies, and they are now reconsidering their options on of coming to the securities market. Same for the Uzbek soon denominated bonds because the FX rates increased, like Uzbek soon depreciated against the dollar, so now it's less less stability for investors. So it also affects the activity of the investments.
Uh, I've seen there's a lot of activity in ESG sector when it comes to Kazakhstan, Tajikistan, and all. In the past, I would say like 1 month or so, like there's been a lot of focus going on, and a lot of new agreements has been in place. Is there any specific projects which are going on in Uzbekistan which are like focusing on ESG a lot more and more significantly? And what about next year? Is there any specific like projects in your mind which you see will be focusing on ESG more?
Yeah, sure. The ESG is a very big topic for us. This year, government put special attention on this ecological issues. So Uzbekistan issued the sustainable bonds internationally. So it's a very good example of this development. A couple of agreements signed by the Ministry of Finance with international organizations which are targeting the ESG process and sustainable growth development. So it is a big sector. Moreover, we do have a lot of infrastructure projects in water treatment, in water supply, some other things, and definitely renewable energy is a key driver for the growth. So I cannot name specific project, but there is a number of areas where the ESG financing from the international financial organizations will be a key driver for, I guess, many years ahead. So, as I mentioned, the renewables, the infrastructure, even textile might be a good examples for this ESG development process. I hope that Uzbekistan will be like an ESG financing champion within a few years in the region.
I was doing some research on ESG myself as well, and I saw like there's been a few solar plants which were introduced. I think with the help of Navoy Group, in terms of the solar. You can say like a power plant which was for energy generation for the whole sector. But there hasn't been a lot of news after that. Is there something which is going on like in terms of solar growth, or is there any projects that you know about which are going to be implemented soon?
Yeah, I guess we did recently the research on all announced renewable projects, the solar and wind. There is a number of like about 30 projects, I guess, with a huge amount of investments, with a huge amount of the installed capacities, but just few of them are on already launched or partially launched or in the process of implementation because it takes time. It's not just tender and tomorrow the station starts working. There is a huge legal process on issuing the guarantees, tariffs, building everything. So I guess 2024, 2025 are pointed as the years with the highest expected amount of the stations commissioned. So we will see how this process will go on, and we'll track the progress of this projects. But most importantly is the legislative and the market infrastructure. So the government announced that we are moving towards the free market in electricity. So there will be wholesale market for the private generation, which will be selling electricity to the grid. So we know that the legislation is now in a design stage. Infrastructure is more or less ready and upcoming. So there is some general understanding how the process will be done. I guess first half of the year we will see some results and announcements on how government wants to see this market operating within next many years.
You mentioned a few times that next year will be a very important, you can say, like a time frame for Uzbekistan's economy because there will be a lot of policies which will be implemented and which will be taking place. What are the key aspects that, as a foreign investor, should be looking into considering next year's market?
Mm-hmm. Well, I guess it's not just important; will be a very tough year, very difficult because the macroeconomic situation, geopolitical processes, everything come that way. That the next year we will need to do a lot of very painful reforms. Government already announced that the number of waves of increasing the tariffs for utility services, infrastructure, like market for electricity, gas will be changed. Infrastructure will need to be updated. The budget deficit should be cut. Inflation should be stable. Even we are increasing the tariffs, so this will be a very hard call for the central bank to keep the inflation on the corridor that they expect it to be. So macroeconomically, first of all, the next year will be very difficult. And since as I mentioned, the legislative development was not that great in this year because of the changes and some moving in and out. Or at least significant part of the documents which supposed to be implemented this year, it moved to the next year. So 2024, it will take a lot of attention and efforts from the government, from the market participants to develop the legislation, do some strategic changes, infrastructure changes, change approach to the regulation of the markets and macroeconomically to keep the stability and the growth. So it's a very huge goal for everyone. And again, it's a chance for investors to come. Probably if we do everything right, 2025 will be a very successful year, and it's better to come to the market ahead of this results.
Thank you so much, Karen. I really appreciate your time.
Yeah, it was good to speak with you, Faizan. Thank you.
Thank you.